Going live. Okay, you're live. Well, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Patrick from the Poison Pen Bookstore here in Scottsdale, Arizona. And please pardon our fashionably late start time. We've had a few little glitches, but we're getting it all together. It's a real pleasure to welcome Lauren Kate with us virtually. She's going to be talking about her brand new book, By Any Other Name. And this is going to be sort of a tag team interview with Barbara Peters, the owner of the store, who's tuning in from home, and John Charles, who's going to be here momentarily. So I have as I'm holding up the copy of the book, and we are getting some signed book plates, I believe.
We are, indeed, we are going to have book plates, which will be absolutely wonderful. And I would like to say, although I didn't expect to participate in this event, but here I am, that I'm just delighted because I whiled away a last Saturday afternoon, in fact, lost in this delightful book. And I wasn't going to get to give it a personal rave to Lauren, but now I get a chance. So all good things happen. In any case, Lauren, you've written other books. Is this your first rom-com or not? I think it is, isn't it?
It absolutely is. Yeah. I mean, the other stories that I've written have had the rom without the com. So I've always been telling love stories. This one happens to be autobiographical, and it's something that happened to me a number of years ago that I have been, I guess, waiting to see the humor and the heroism in. I've been wanting to retell the story, but recasting it so that the main character responds to circumstances in the ways that I suppose I wish I had when I was living her life. And, strangely, a few years ago, I made a New Year's resolution to start telling more jokes. I think that was a part of me that since I had my kids who are now 7 and 8, I kind of lost touch with that. I think I became the serious one in the family and everybody else was over here making all these jokes. And I said one year, I'm going to get funny again. I'm going to get back in touch with that side of myself. And I did not intend for it to come out in the form of a book, but that is one of the ways that it manifested.
Oh, aren't we lucky? Because actually one of the joys of this book, aside from it being a wonderful love story and also a fabulous glimpse into publishing, which I really enjoyed. We sold Poison Pen Press in 2019, so I am no longer an editor, but I lived her life too, to a large extent. But the humor in it is really funny. And also, it's a young and very much, I realize that every year that passes, I'm getting farther away from, like the main group of readers. There aren't that many rom-coms written for people 81, but it was just great to see this younger version of myself and yourself, although I was never that funny. But also, it's a real love letter to New York too, and particularly to Central Park, because there's a wonderful scene. This isn't a mystery, so we actually can talk about things, which is so rare. But there's a marvelous kind of, what do you call it in a play? Like a
through line. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, an elderly couple, but they weren't originally, who keep appearing at the same magical spot in Central Park, where our heroine, the book editor, thinks is the most beautiful place in New York, and she goes there to refresh herself. And I thought it was really nice the way you sort of, forecast that as the end, the resolution of the romance, because it plays out along. But I've spent a lot of time in New York and Central Park. We sold our home at 57th and Park in 2008 because we didn't come to New York anymore. And my husband grew up there. So, it has some meaning for us. But what I really loved was the relationship, not just with the editor and the author, which Lauren will talk about, but the editor and her publisher. And it is a bit of a Game of Thrones in a big publishing house, particularly now when the big publishing houses are really big. But you've got Peony Press is still small enough to be more personal, isn't it? Is that, I don't know what your own background was. Did you work in a smaller press?
I didn't. I worked at HarperCollins, so it was a
big press,
big ones. but within it, I think that it varies from house to house, but within it, the little imprints operate, somewhat independently. So it feels like you're with the small group of people who kind of have your back and care about your same books over the years, and you can kind of grow up with them together. And I did the connections that I made. This was my first job out of college. I was 22 years old. I drove up in a friend's car and like slept on people's couches until I could get this job. And New York was not a familiar place to me. I grew up in Texas and I didn't know anyone. And so the kind of assistant group of young people who all like were starting out just like me, we bonded, intensely through the ups and downs that, everybody has at their first job. And it's been so beautiful to see how each of this group, I would say there were 8 or 10 of us who stayed together for the first 5 years of our careers. And now we've all gone on in different directions. Almost everybody is still in the book world, but all over the place. And so charting those different publishing stories, I loved my time working as an editor so much. I thought that, I still do this, but surrounding myself in my days and my conversations about stories and how to bring them to more readers is a really, really joyful way to spend your time.
I can see that it is. As I thought you nailed the publicist super well. I mean, I love this book starts with this wonderful New York launch party, only in New York, which you actually have like helium balloons filled with cake confetti that people can consume. It's all over the top. And the challenge is that the best-selling author, Noa, is never in public. So the launch party is going to proceed without the author, which is the same thing I, as a bookseller, would hope never to have happened to me because it would be really tough. Although actually it has happened to me. I'm trying to remember where I had an author who came who was so sick that the author couldn't do the program and sat in a chair. It was a very famous author. And I wound up doing the program, and afterward on Yelp, we got this horrible criticism from some woman who came and said, don't go near that woman. She was just out, she stole the show. I didn't want to embarrass the author by saying he's going to throw up if he stands up. So I'm just going to do the talk, and he'll sign your books for you. But I've always remembered this completely hilarious Yelp comment afterward. And I thought, well, you do what you can. But anyway, the publicist who's working on that has a more central role later when the revelation about the author may overset a great many things. But the thing about a little press like Peony Press is that it really is dependent to a huge degree financially, its budget, the whole bit, on this one best-selling author, because that's a lot of muscle in the book world. And they probably, for those of you who are naive about how it all works or untutored, let me say that the more the publisher pays for an author, the more the publisher spends to make the author a success. And I see this every day, so it's not that hard for me to look at the array of books. I just finished March, so let's say April. I can pretty much tell what are going to be the April bestsellers because I can work it out where the money's going to go. And you wish that it would be on the best books, but it isn't always, I mean, there's a lot of factors that go into it. Anyway, I thought you were realistic, but at the same time, come on, it's a romantic comedy. So there's just lovely stuff. You must have had so much fun writing this.
I really did. In some ways, the main character is rooted in aspects of myself. She's more autobiographical than probably other heroines that I've written. And so I did have to consult a number of previous diaries, which were very cringeworthy. But after doing that and spending a little bit of time with my past self, I realized that the thing that I don't remember about myself in the years that I was living in New York and working in publishing was how really dreamy and passionate and optimistic I was about my own future as a writer. And that was the thing that I was trying to do the whole time I was working in publishing. So I when I looked back, I was kind of looking for like, where did I get broken up with? Who was I dating here? I wanted to get some romance boosts, but what I came away with was the voice of the character, which was just so exuberantly optimistic about the future and about the power of love stories. So that was
it's not just your editor, but Noa the author. Noa the author is a lovely author, and also has a wonderful voice. And then the book ends up in Italy, totally romantic. Well, almost ends up in Italy, and so you've got New York, you've got Italy, you've got all this wonderful stuff. And now we have John Charles, who's actually our host for this afternoon. Hi, John.
Oh, sorry for my tardiness.
No, it gave me a chance to have a little rave here with Lauren, because I truly love the book. I spent Saturday with it and I was so enchanted. I forgot to send the link to Lauren and her publicist for this Zoom event. Because I was reading the book. However, I did send it to you, so you do get a small charge. But in any case, I'm going to vanish then. But Lauren, what a treat that I got to speak to you.
Thank you.
And I'm going to leave John to carry on.
All right.
Thanks.
Hi, John.
Hi, John.
Bye. Hi, Lauren.
Hello.
It's lovely to meet you. I think we were all just so enamored with your book, we lost track of time and place.
Well, I will take that as any excuse anytime.
Well, it was a delightful book. I'm always interested. You've had a rather interesting journey to becoming a published writer. Can you tell us a little bit about that? I guess you could say ballet's loss was the writing business's gain.
Yes. Yeah. I did have former dreams of being a dancer. I was crushed to learn I didn't have the right feet. But I did at that point turn to writing, and that was kind of the thing that I always wanted to do. I wrote 2 full novel drafts and sent them out kind of up, down, and sideways everywhere I could think of to try to get them published, and was just roundly rejected everywhere. I have a shoebox of 67 rejection letters. And this was like back in the days where I actually had to like print out the hard copies and take them to the post office. But during that era, I happened to be working at a publishing house, and this is what we've been talking about a bit already. So I was learning the inside of the business and how the editorial process goes, and working on other people's books, and then meanwhile trying to write my own stories and trying to figure out what I wanted to tell and how to share it. So yeah, it was the right kind of apprenticeship, certainly for me, because one of the main things that I learned was how fun and energetic and improving the editorial collaboration is. I really am not precious about my first drafts, because I've learned how much better my writing, and really everyone's writing I've ever worked with, gets when you are working with an editor, when you're working with someone who you trust and who cares about the future of your book and its destiny. And I look forward to that part so much. And I'm not sure I would have known the joys of that had I not had my stopover in publishing first.
You do talk a bit about revision, but you've also used revision not just in your writing, but when it comes to relationships, because relationships need that too. Yeah,
I think I have, look, revision is one of my obsessions in personal relationships and in writing. It's sort of something that I try to stay tuned into all the time. I love the idea that for sometimes a lifelong relationship or a very long marriage, it's impossible to stay the person that you are from the beginning of the relationship until, whatever moment you're in down the road. And I think how challenging that can be for a lot of relationships, to not know how to build in that editorial space or that revisionary space, to let the other person grow and become different and surprise you and stop finishing your sentences because they're moving into a different realm. So, I think it's a work in progress for friendships, for family relationships, and for certainly romantic relationships. And it's at the heart of Noa and Lanie's love story in this book, for sure.
Another thing that kind of is a key ingredient is writer's block, because your author experiences that. And for those of us that are not writers, we don't totally understand that. Can you talk a little bit about writer's block? And I think you've said that it's a luxury you can't afford as a writer.
Yeah, but I mean, I still get it all the time. But I have learned my own work throughs to try to not let it completely derail my day or my week. I think what it shakes out to for me now is when I start to write a novel at this point, I'm about to begin a new one, I really have a pretty clear outline with all the scenes and chapters that I intend to write. It doesn't stay like that necessarily. I mean, it probably veers away from the outline by maybe like, I don't know, 35% if I had to say, quite a bit. But I really need that plan to stick to, at least until I figure out who the characters are and get to know them a bit and learn to trust them when they want to go this way and the outline said go that way. And then there's a moment when I get to be like, okay, you win, let's go, that'll be better. But yeah, I mean, the thing that I do to help with writer's block is always, it started in my body rather than my mind. So I get up every day and I go, there's a specific hike that I go to with my dog, and I have the scene in my mind that I need to write that day. And I do this 30 or 40-minute hike up and down this mountain. When by the time I get to the top, I usually have the first sentence in my mind. And then I kind of stand around, I look at the ocean on the days when it's clear enough to see it. And I think being out of my chair, moving around, being in nature, it helps me unlock some of what feels like pressure. You know, once you sit down and you're looking at that blinking cursor and the blank Word document, to me, that's quite uninspiring. And so I try to get the opposite, like the inspiration boost right at the beginning of the day. If I can return to my house with like 3 or 4 sentences in my mind and just start typing, that's the best chance I have for warding off the dreaded writer's block at least another day.
One of the other things that comes through in the book is the sense of place, not just Italy, where your character travels, but also New York City. Is that important to you as an author? Did you really want to showcase kind of those little hidden spots like the cloisters and places that the average tourist might not see?
Yeah, certainly. So the novelist within the book is a New York writer. All of the novels have a big kind of New York set piece, and New York's a character and all of that. In this particular moment when the story begins, the writer feels sick of New York. Like there's nothing new to say about any New York landmark. And so the editor takes it upon herself to just to find some unknown gems and get everybody inspired again by looking at places that the average tourist wouldn't necessarily find. And I think that those are the places that the locals and the natives of any city love their hidden gems. And if they had the chance to show them to a best-selling novelist who might plug them into the book, I think we'd all be thrilled to get that opportunity. And so that's her undertaking for the book. And they journey around to a lot of different sites in New York. And yeah, I mean, I think in every single one of my books, setting is a character, like it's a living, breathing thing within my stories. In this book, it felt to me like New York was not just a character, it was like a best friend. It's like a force that comes through for the heroine of the story when she needs assistance and inspiration and support.
Your main protagonist, Lanie, does work in publishing. You've worked in publishing, as you've said. When you were writing the book, did you ever find yourself looking back on your own experiences and perhaps borrowing or adapting a few things to include?
Yeah, I just lifted it all and like dropped it down in the book and then let the dust fall. Yeah, I mean, a lot, surely much of it is massaged, but all those exciting little details and frivolous little details of just sort of a rich moment in my life, down to little insignificant things. Like one of my dearest friends, when I was working in publishing, my friend who worked, in the cube next to me had this like 95-year-old tortoise as a pet. And it was always at her parties, just at large, walking around the house. And it was just a real character of a tortoise. And so just dropping, giving that pet to Lanie and dealing with the relationship she has with this small creature. There was a lot of truth lifted from my life and sprinkled in, even if it's silly truth, I guess.
You've written both books for adults and books for teens. As you're writing, do you find that you have to switch gears slightly, or is it the same process when you're writing a book? How do you approach a particular title?
It really is largely the same process. I mean, there are small distinctions that, I don't know. I don't think it's a difference for me between like knowing that this is going to be directed for this age group versus that age group, and there's difference in years. It's more just like any character is sort of impossible to write until you get really deep inside them or right up next to them. So that certainly doesn't happen for me in the early part of a first draft, but there is always a moment when I realize, oh, okay, I'm here. I have the voice. I understand this person. We've gotten to know each other. She's let me in. And then it's like, whether she's 45 or 11, I'm with her. So I really try to take the cues from the characters as soon as they'll let me. I think what's interesting about writing within this genre, within the rom-com genre, and having written for younger audiences in the past, is that both books for teens and like middle grade readers and books and rom-coms, they rely on a redemptive ending. That's just sort of a focus point and an essential element of those books. It doesn't have to be, Hollywood, everything ties up with a bow, but there is an opportunity for redemption for the characters at the end. There's not, even if there's a tragedy, there's a moment where we see beyond it and we see the possibility that lays ahead, and there's joy to be found and love to be found in the future. And that's not a requirement for me in the books that I read, but I think it would be very hard for me to write a book that didn't end redemptively. So I feel right at home, both writing for younger audiences and writing in the rom-com. In the rom-com world, I think that HEA, happily ever after, as a necessity of a goal in the narrative structure, I find that very reassuring, and I don't want to mess with that.
I think you're right to say that. I think sometimes there's this misperception by people when they're talking about genre fiction that romance tends to get the blunt end of the stick because we want happily ever after endings. But you talk to mystery readers and they want to see the puzzle solved, justice resolved. Science fiction readers want to see new worlds explored. Each genre has its own kind of reader expectations that the writer has to fulfill.
Yeah, listening to you make that catalog, it feels like they all rely on a certain kind of order to be regained at the end. Things can get as chaotic as they need to, and then some sort of order. And in this case, redemptive, happy order. I'll take it.
Mm-hmm. You talked a little bit about point of view, and I know that's important to you as a writer. That also can kind of be synonymous with an author's writing style. Can you talk a little bit about, for someone who hasn't read your books, how would you describe your writing style or your brand, as they like to call it?
Yeah. My writing is, this is actually the first person story that I've written. So that's a new point of view for me, but it feels very much of a piece with the super close third points of view that all my previous books have been written in. There's a great sense of intimacy, I think, between my protagonists and the reader. I think of the reader always as the best, deepest, most intimate friend that my protagonist can have. So I think like interiority is very important to me. I often think about the space between the people we are inside and the people that we show the world, and the discomfort when that space gets too big and you feel like the world is not seeing you as you see yourself, or you're not able to show the world you as you feel inside. And so I think that's one of the things I have always loved as a reader about books, and now I love it as a writer, is that there is always someone, in this case, the general reader, that I feel my characters can be truly themselves in front of and never have to hide anything from, good, bad, or ugly. So I would say, I guess, that maybe this is strange, but maybe that's the closest way to describe my style. I try to be as intimate as possible with the relationship between my protagonists and the reader.
You do have a strong connection with your characters. You definitely deliver on that. You've been in publishing on both sides, in the business side and as a writer. If you could change one thing about the business of writing, what would you change?
Oh, that's such an interesting question. Gosh, you're stumping me. There is so much that I love about it. I mean, I guess the impossible, which would just be more time, more energy, more funds to boost all of the great stories out there. I think, especially during COVID, I was seeing, from in every avenue of the writing and publishing world, just we were all so exhausted, and what we needed most were great narratives to uplift us, right? But the expenditures of energy that it takes to get those books out into the world, into the hands of people who need them, is great. It's a taxing profession, and so I would just love to give an extra lightning bolt of energy to everybody who works in the industry, so that we can put as much as possible into all the great stories that are coming out.
I think the kind of one thing that underscores what you just said in the book was, I don't think people realize how much work goes into a launch party. You have that opening scene where people are creating displays and doing refreshments and all these, and it seems like it's just magic when you arrive and everything's there, but there's a lot of paddling going on underneath the surface.
That's true. I do remember the days when we were planning a big event like that, just racing up and down the halls. And sometimes I would think to myself, is this an ER? Is somebody about to die? Because we're taking this so incredibly seriously. But it felt very important to get everything to feel effortless and magical, so that the readers could come in and be transported into the world of a story.
One of the other things, one of the many things I loved about By Any Other Name was you write with such great insight about the connection readers have with a book and an author. There's that very strong, almost sense of love that comes across in that, between your character Lanie and her love for Noa's books, and how readers kind of can form that bond. I know that you have a couple of books in your past that you form bonds with. One, I think, was White Noise, and the other was Clan of the Cave Bear. Can you talk a little bit about the reader bond from your perspective?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, when a book changes your life or awakens you to something new, I think that you are connected to that book for life. And I can think of, two experiences are coming to mind where I have met authors in person, either at their book events or on my own tours, that I idolize. One is Louis Sacchar, who's a children's book writer that I was crazy for when I was reading my own first books in elementary school. And I met him at a book festival and just dissolved into tears because he had inspired me so much. It was such a huge experience to even know that he was a real person and see his face and watch him drink a beer at a cocktail hour. And the second one, I remember reading Rachel Cusk, who wrote quite a few books that meant a lot to me right after I had my kids. And same thing, when I met her, I fully intended to just go up and say, your books have been so special to me. And I couldn't get the words out. I couldn't even speak. I just wept, And I've been on the other side where I've met with a reader who was moved by something that I had written, and knowing what it feels like on the other side, it's so embarrassing to fall apart like that, but I understand it. And I think all of us who love stories, we get how powerful this bond can be. I don't know, I feel like we're all in it together, and to pay that forward to another writer. I guess I'm glad that I did that.
In addition to just writing books, authors nowadays have a lot of other duties that they have to follow through on, including connecting with readers through social media. Can you talk a little bit about your own relationship with social media? Are there particular platforms you gravitate to? Is it something you'd rather not be involved with?
Yeah, I do enjoy it. I mean, mostly because it's just it's an opportunity to not be isolated. It's an opportunity to connect. I would say right now my favorite recent place to discover books and connect with my readers is on Instagram. But I am dipping my toe into TikTok, and I think Book Talk is like taking us into some very cool places with boosting stories that people are loving. So I've enjoyed that a whole lot. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting to participate in social media in the way that it feels like it's supposed to benefit your books. To me, it's really different than the skill set that I'm comfortable with, which is, super introverted, diving into the world of make-believe people. So it's a little bit of a toggle for me to kind of come out and be like, hello, I'm not totally socially awkward. I can say my book is out, that kind of thing. I'm certainly more comfortable behind my computer, just typing away and inventing new things. But the benefits and the connections that I've made over the years, it's wonderful. So I'll keep it up, and I'm going to get into the TikTok world soon too.
Yeah, TikTok does seem to be really taking off with readers and with authors. I know that a lot of people who are aspiring writers want some words of wisdom from someone who's been there, done that. And I think I read somewhere that your best piece of advice was finish the book. Can you talk a little bit about what you would tell an aspiring writer?
Yeah. So, I mean, it's so simple, but I think it's quite profound. So when I want to say 24, 25, I had finished a draft of my first novel, or I was about to finish it. I was maybe 2 chapters from the end. And I knew it was terrible. And I knew that I had so many ideas for future stories that I was much more excited about, that I hadn't ruined yet, that this one was pretty much ruined. And I was taking a writing workshop. One of the people in the workshop was this wise older screenwriter. And I told her one day, like, yeah, I'm almost done with the book, but I'm going to abandon it because, I got 16 other ideas, and like this next one's really calling to me. And she was so suddenly intense with me. She stopped me in the street. She put her hands on my shoulders. She looked me in the eyes and she said, "You finished that terrible book. You need to learn that you can do it." And I didn't, I took her advice, but I didn't quite understand it at the moment, because I just finished the chapters and then sent it to people and it was roundly rejected. Then with my second book, the same thing happened. I got to that just almost the very end point, and I was full of self-doubt and, really didn't want to finish it. I get to that point every time with every single manuscript, right around that last couple of chapters. I simply want to quit. And now I know that I hear that voice in my mind every time that's saying, my books get so much better in revision. I just have to get through that crappy first draft so that I can start the part that makes the books better and beautiful and become what they want to be. But I would never, I would have abandoned 8 different novels by now, I think, and never finished a one had I not had that shakedown from Mo.
You are a big reader yourself. How do you discover new authors, new titles? Do you have particular sources you go to? Is it your editorial experience that you're able to look across the publishing spectrum and say, this is what I want to read? Talk to us a little bit about your journey as a reader and how you choose something.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it I would say is word of mouth, because I talk to a lot of book lovers just in my daily life. So I have tons of people whose ideas and opinions on new books I really trust, and I know if if Sadie liked it, I'm for sure going to like it. That's a lucky thing that I guess is not useful to anyone listening if you don't have those people in your life. But I am in a number of different book clubs. I find that book clubs and you get a vibe with a certain book club. This is my book club with just my very close friends, and we only want to read kind of contemporary women's fiction. And this is my like social justice book club. So we're looking for like what is really pushing the boundaries of what's going on in the world today. But I think social media is an amazing place for discovering new books. Instagram and now TikTok. You can get a sense, I think, even from a bookstagrammer of, if I really love the way that they just phrase their reviews, I might have the same taste as them. And it's all about taste and just finding people whose taste you can intuitively trust. And I think that's the same with independent booksellers. You go to a certain store because you like what it has going on, and you can generally trust the recommendations of the booksellers inside of it, because that, it's such a big part of the job is reading and sharing the things that you love. So yeah, I'm trying to think if there's like the great rom-com that I just finished that I loved was One Last Stop by Casey McQuiston. And I really love Talia Hibbert's books and Mary McFarlane's books. Those are some recent rom-coms that I've thought were fantastic.
You mentioned book clubs, and in By Any Other Name, there are some book discussion questions at the back. Did you help write those? Was that fun for you? Was it torture as an author dissecting your work?
No, I do. I love book clubs so much that anything related to a book club thrills me. I did work with my editorial team on those questions and the interviews and the materials that come with them. And yeah, I'm so happy with the questions, because I think that yes, this is a light read. It's a happy ending story about people falling in love, but it deals with quite a few issues of, gender roles and gender expectations, and what a writer is supposed to be and what pseudonyms mean. And so there are some deeper questions that I was moved by when I was writing the story. And I'm really glad to kind of transfer that conversation now to the readers.
Yeah, there's people who don't read romance sometimes dismiss it, but there are hidden depths to a lot of the books, and there certainly are in By Any Other Name. Can you tell us a little bit about what's coming next, or do you want to keep that a secret?
Yeah, no, I certainly can. I'm working on a new rom-com that kind of the concept has just clicked into place for me. There's usually like, I know who the person is who I want to write about, and I'm just waiting to figure out what's going to happen, or the other way around. I know what's going to happen. I'm just waiting to figure out who it is. So the two have finally come together for me with this one. I'm very excited to start writing it. I think it's going to be a Los Angeles story, but I'm not sure yet. And I'm also beginning a young adult fantasy series. So I'm kind of toggling between the two again, which is where I like to be. And I have a middle grade novel coming out a year from now that I've just finished.
You'll be very busy then.
Yeah.
And how can readers learn more about you and your books? Do you have a website? What's the best way?
Yes, my website is laurenkatebooks.net, and my social media handles are always Lauren Kate Books. I'm on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook and TikTok.
Well, I can't believe we've already run out of time. It's just been a delight talking with Lauren Kate, and her new book is By Any Other Name. Thank you, Lauren, for sharing your time with us today, and thank you for writing truly a wonderful book. It's the perfect summer read. It's empowering, enlightening, and fun.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It was great to talk with you.
And thank you for tuning in to another virtual author event at the Poison Pen Bookstore.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Enjoy the book.
All right. Thank you, Lauren. You did a wonderful job.
Thank you. Those were great questions. This was a really fun conversation.
Well, I really enjoyed the book. It was great fun. I just gobbled it right down.